And to colleagues at ADAMAS, we are honoured to be here. I signed with your distinguished Chancellor a Memorandum of Understanding between Bath University and ADAMAS, so we will be exchanging staff and students over the next few years, so we hope to see some of you in the UK very soon. Okay, so I'm going to talk today for about 20 minutes on this theme, internationalization in British higher education, thoughts and challenges. The UK is a great provider of higher education to overseas students. The UK universities educate 1.1 million students per year, either in the UK, around 450,000 students, or via transnational education arrangements. So the UK, since the 1990s, has had this big surge of growth in terms of internationalization and international growth. But at the same time, there have been changes in terms of the UK as a whole. UK universities are outward looking. Britain as a whole, in the last couple of years, has turned in upon itself, most notably with the arrival of Brexit, due to occur in less than 2 months' time. We will see. So internationalization. I want to talk about the global picture in terms of the students that visit us and the students we send out worldwide. I want to talk about the research infrastructure worldwide of British higher education. And I want to talk about we as a small, elite, liberal arts school in the southwest of England do in terms of our global reach. Okay? So, as I say, it's great to be here. It's great to be here in India, Gianna's country, Italy, and mine, Great Britain. In a sense, we look back to the kind of post-colonial baggage. But India is a country of the future. India and China are the countries of the 21st century, and India, unlike China, doesn't have the anti-democratic baggage that China does. So you are at the start of something amazing in terms of India and its growth and development. You as students moving forward will shape and influence Indian society and cultural life and arts, humanities, the sciences over the next 50 years, and it's going to be an exciting journey. Okay, so where do international students study around the world? They study in a great many places. The most notable destination is the United States. You will see that it is number one in global terms, but closely followed by Great Britain, which has 430,000 students resident in the UK studying at British universities. But that growth is tapering off. Canada, the US, Australia all see double-digit growth in their student numbers from overseas, where in Britain it's been becalmed. Growth rates of students arriving in the UK in the last 3 years have been up by 1%, 0.5%, 1%. So the growth is smaller. There is a perception that Britain is perhaps not as welcoming as it used to be before the days of Brexit, that overseas students are not as welcome. And this, of course, is a misconception. But you can see where that attitude is coming from. So we have to work very hard to correct perceptions as British universities. So how many students does the UK receive? I'm not sure if you can make that number out, but the answer is 442,000 per year. Around a third of those are postgraduate students, either postgraduate taught or postgraduate research, PhD students, but the vast majority, 2/3, are undergraduate students. So where do these students come from? You will see that the vast majority are from the EC, from the European Community, and from China. Between China and Hong Kong, around 150,000 students come to study in the UK. You will see that India provides around the same number of students to the UK as Hong Kong. And that number has dropped because of the calamitous decision to change the student visa for Indian students from Tier 2 to Tier 4, which in effect meant that until a few years ago, Indian students could graduate and then work for 2 years. That has changed, and there has been a very disappointing drop in the number of Indian students in British universities. We are hoping that that will be reversed. There is a pilot scheme in some of our major universities where Tier 2 visas are available to Indian students, but let's hope that that is rolled out moving forward throughout the whole of the country. So what do students study? Well, you will see from this that business, engineering, social sciences, the whole range of subjects, arts, science, humanities. You will see from the next slide that this is very important to UK PLC, that the university sector, and in particular the international side of the international sector, is worth £25.8 billion to the UK economy. So it's a great deal of money. Will we lose students from the European community post-Brexit? Simple answer at the moment is very likely to be yes, because ECTS students will be reclassified as international students and thereby will be liable for the full international fee, which is £12,500, as opposed to the £9,000 charged to, at the moment, EC and UK students. So the impact is very great, but at the same time, more than 442,000 are taught offshore. So British universities have a significant number of TNE, transnational educational arrangements, 707,000 students. Again, the largest number of those arrangements are in China. When I was a professor at the University of Northumbria, I went to our first graduation ceremony and looked at the graduation booklet, which was like a kind of Tolstoy novel. It was huge, but what I didn't realize was that 80% of the students were graduating offshore in Shanghai or Beijing or Hong Kong or wherever it might be. So that, again, has been very important in British higher education. The overall experience of students in the UK from overseas is a positive one. Okay, we also have a very significant number of overseas staff working in British universities. 30% of all academics and all professional services staff in British universities are not from the United Kingdom. They're from a number of countries, and they divide fairly equally between teaching and learning staff, between research-only staff, between teaching staff as well. So British higher education is permeated by international staff. 3 out of 10 of my colleagues at Bar Spa are from overseas, and that adds to the mixture and the diversity of ourselves as an institution. Where do international staff come from? The vast majority of overseas students are from the European community. After that, United States, Canada, in 10th place, India. So India is the 10th most successful country in terms of placing its staff in British institutions. Okay, so let's move out from student numbers, staff numbers, to the purpose of our discourse worldwide in British universities. The strategic approach to international cooperation does many useful things. Develops access to high-quality facilities, increases mobility, it builds capacity, knowledge exchange, it enhances our research. Our researchers learn from their exposure to overseas staff, to overseas students, to overseas exchange projects as well. It helps bring in investment into British higher education. It enables us to tackle some of the grand challenges which I'll outline in a minute. Okay, so how is British research funded? I am Pro-Vice Chancellor for Research, an international, an enterprise, And the two strands of research and international are deeply linked. British higher education cannot only look inside. So how do we fund research in the United Kingdom? There is the famous dual funding structure for research in the UK, the research councils and the funding council allocation. So every university receives a block grant from the government as part of a periodic review every 7 years, known as the Research Excellence Framework. The rest of the funding comes from the 7 research councils, okay? Arts and humanities, biotechnology, engineering, economic and social research, medical research council, natural environment research council, science and technology. So around £5 billion a year on top of the 6 billion from the block grant, and around another 10 billion in terms of investment from the third sector, so educational charities, but also big companies, pharmaceutical companies, oil companies, so on and so on. Okay, my subject, English literature. I'm a professor of English. I'm also a historian and artist. That is the least funded in terms of the research councils in the UK, for better or worse. You will see that humanities are the lowest funded of the research councils. The big thumping councils are biotechnology, and in particular the engineering and physical sciences research, which is around £800 million per year going into British universities. Okay? So an emphasis on STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics and medicine. British higher education, in terms of its research structure, is funded through a body known as Research England, which gives us a block grant, but also the 7 research councils. So this is the organogram of the British research infrastructure. Much of our work at Bath University maps in on the global challenges which we face as on a global scale. Okay? Much of our work, we collaborate with the EC, with North America, with Canada, but at the moment an increasing amount of our work is with ODA, Overseas Development Assistance countries. And in particular, as the excellent introduction to myself noted, we work most particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, in the Middle East, and in the Indian subcontinent. So these are the United Nations Sustainable Goals. So for cleaner water, for cooperation, for collaboration throughout the world between ODA countries and the Western world. So these are the estimable goals of much of our international research. No poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure. Finally, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible production and consumption. So these are the goals of much of the research infrastructure of Great Britain. So we map these UN agendas, the final 3, I think, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace, justice, how they go on, don't they? And strong institutions, partnership for the goals. So these are the issues which I'll talk about how we address in a couple of minutes' time. So headlines and challenges. Brexit, this is the great overbearing problem in the United Kingdom. I remember being interviewed on the radio a couple of years ago for a podcast on higher education. This was in late 2016. And I told a story about once I went to the doctors because I was suffering from a really bad abdominal pain, and the doctor kind of poked about in my stomach, and he said, "Oh yes, what we've got here is a case of GOK." And I kind of looked at him and thought, "I've not heard of GOK." And he said, "What I mean is God only knows." And the next evening I was taken into hospital with appendicitis. And I said then, and this is 2.5 years ago, that Brexit is a case of GOK, God only knows. And here we are 2.5 years onwards, and we still do not know. British higher education is at the edge of a cliff. We do not know whether we'll participate in the various funding strands of the European community. British higher education has thought over the last couple of years that our partners in Utrecht or Rome or Bologna or Heidelberg will always want to work with Imperial College or King's or Oxford University, so something will be done. Well, March the 29th, not very far away, and nothing has been arranged. So we will see. Still, at the moment, God only knows. So what do we do as an institution? This is our town. This is Bath. Bath is a very ancient city, founded by the Romans in 2 millennia ago. This is the famous Roman baths rediscovered in the mid-19th century. So you see there Bath encapsulated. The Roman baths built 2,050 years ago, the medieval abbey built in the 11th century, and a famous Georgian terrace. Bath was a place of resort, a spa town in the 18th century. So a mixture of the Roman, the medieval, and the Georgian, but also a forward-looking place. Bath is a centre for the creative industries. But it is a World Heritage Centre. When our guests from ADAMAS came to visit us in November, we showed them round our university. So we are a small university of 25 years standing. We're a liberal arts university. We don't teach much in the way of science. We have 8,000 students, 15% of which are international. 8% of our total students are from China. The rest are from all over the world. We have 3 colleges: the College of Liberal Arts, the Institute for Education, and the Bath School of Arts and Design. And our buildings are architectural treasures from a long time ago. This is where I'm based, the Corsham Court campus of Bath Spa University. My office is on the window above the black door in the middle. So this is a 16th century Downton Abbey type place, which we rent off an English milord who has the eastern side of the house, and very entertaining it is here. So our 21st century university is housed in these ancient buildings. This is the main house, the administrative hub, where the Vice-Chancellor and the Pro-Vice-Chancellor, such as myself, are based. The main house at Newton Park in South Bath. This is the kind of entrance hall to the university. So Bath is a heritage town. It's a heritage university as well. This is the famous Georgian terrace, the Royal Crescent. So we are very active in terms of EC funding, in terms of staff mobility, the 2 staff mobility, in terms of staff mobility and capacity building. So, for example, over the last few years, we have worked very hard with Eastern Europe in terms of mobility. And, for example, 3 years ago, we went to Taras Shevchenko University in Ukraine. We established a couple of seed corn European mobility arrangements, and this led to a much bigger EC grant known as Destine, which is a capacity building grant in which 900,000 euros will be heading in our direction to build capacity in terms of the teaching of journalism in Ukrainian universities. So we are working with partners in Ireland, in Belgium, and in Ukraine on this project. So 150 Ukrainian professors will be descending on us to our Newton Park campus in next month. So developing capacity. So that's the model that we seek to move and adapt. And this is the model we're using in India as well with ADAMAS. Though, of course, that funding is under threat from the possibility of Brexit. Now, these next few slides are going to look like my holiday snaps, and they're not meant to look like my holiday snaps, but these are the various places we've been working with in our ODA work over the last few months. So this is in Suleimania, in northern Iraq, in Kurdistan. We signed an MOU and an Erasmus mobility scheme with Kurdistan. We signed one with the Catholic University of Eastern Africa, which is in southern Nairobi. And you can see my distinguished colleague, Professor Matthias Sneakers, there. And we followed that up by going to Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, and we're doing the same thing. And these are valuable exchanges. Our staff learn from spending 1 month or 2 months in Iraq or India or Addis Ababa or Nairobi. So it's a two-way process. We learn, they learn, and all is excellent in terms of that part of our work. So we have links with, I shall try and move this along very quickly. So we're developing links in China, in India, notably with ADAMAS, and with other countries throughout the globe. Much of this work is funded by a new scheme, the Global Challenges Research Fund, which is £1.5 billion of funding given to British universities to work with ODA countries over the next few years. It will, I hope, continue post-Brexit, but we're hoping that we'll have the two accessible streams of EU and GCRF funding. So this is a challenge fund to aim that UK research takes a leading role in addressing the problems faced by developing countries through challenge-led disciplinarity and interdisciplinary research. So a two-way collaboration. We work with ODA universities, they work with us. And we have many projects in train as we move forward. We have a disaster management project with Himachal Pradesh, do forgive my pronunciation, with the University of Delhi and the National Institute of Himalayan Environment and Sustainable Development. We're working with ADAMAS as part of that drive. We have a large project which we host called SLAFNet, which is an EC-funded project on slavery in Africa, modern and historical. Okay? So we have collaborative partners throughout Africa as part of SLAFNet, in Namibia, in Senegal, in Ethiopia, in Nairobi, in South Africa. We have the Globalized African Landscape Project, which is a 1.5 million Arts and Humanities Research Council project to do with the culture of water. And this colleague of mine, Professor John Strachan, is working on a series of projects in Namibia which improve water purification, especially in that desert-ridden land, but also has an environmental humanities side as well. So how is water represented in African culture in Namibia? We have many Indian links, as I've said, with Delhi, with Chennai, with NID in Ahmedabad, in TIS, VIT Vellore, ADAMAS, and so on and so on. So India is a really important part of our work and of British higher education as a whole. India, as I say, is a country of the future. Our staff can learn from working with you. Your staff can learn from working with us. We were very pleased to be talking to the Indian Council for Cultural Relations about endowing a possible chair of Indian Studies at Bath University. We're also working with the University of Bath, which is a science university in our town, in terms of working in projects which involve our humanities subjects, cultural geography, for example, but also heavy engineering as well. As of October this year, we will be having an annual India Day. This one will be coincidental with the 150th anniversary of the birth of the Mahatma Gandhi. So we're deepening our Indian links throughout at the moment and moving forward. So thank you very much.